we are going to, before I turn it over to the panel, one of the things that we started doing when we went back to shows post-COVID, we started polling, because we've been in all these cities that we're traveling, so we started polling our database about who is doing extraordinary in their job, and we all know that you guys do great jobs, and thank you all for all your hard work in the cyber industry, because we all know it keeps many people up at night. So unfortunately, I don't have a certificate for everyone, but I do have some selected few that we're gonna honor today, and it's just a certificate and then a little gift to say thank you. And my first one is Bola. She already won $100 on the gas, and I won't try to say your last name, but she's a cybersecurity engineer from Car Global. Thank you. How do you say your last name?
Adeni.
Yeah, I would have messed that up. Okay. All right. Congratulations, Bola.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Tony Vega. He has been following our virtual events all through COVID. He's from Full Beauty Brands. He's the IT Compliance and Security Manager. Are you here? Yay, Tony. Thanks, Tony, for supporting our events. I can't tell you how many people that we met through COVID that we didn't know. Actually, many of my panelists we met through COVID. Martin Shares, he is the Vice President of Tech Strategy from Martin Brothers Distributing. Thank you, Martin, for all your hard work. I have Christopher Baugh. He is the Senior Director of IT Corporate Delivery for High Point Global. Are you here, Christopher? All right, come on up, Christopher. Thank you. Then, oops, don't lose that. Okay, Daniel, I'm not going to, I'm afraid I'm going to mess your name up, but he is the Associate Director of Cybersecurity from Trygstad Healthcare Products. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
How do you say your last name?
Okay, it's Achinelli. So just pretend you're sneezing, you won't forget it.
Achinelli, all right. Thank you. Dennis Teague, he's a Senior Security Architect from Clifton Larson Allen. All right. Thank you for all your hard work. And then we have Keema Sohal. He is the Head of Global Information Security Operations from SMC of America. Thank you, Keemus, for all your hard work. Then we have Nathan Grimer. He is a cybersecurity architect from Bex Hybrids. Nathan, are you here still? I feel like Nathan told us he had to leave early. Noah Brown is the CISO for Knowledge Services. Noah, are you here? Noah, I know he was here earlier. Okay, who do we have next? Samuel Herman. He's the IT security engineer from Republic Airways. Thank you for all your hard work. Todd Wilkinson. He's the Chief Information Security Architect from Elanco. Are you here, Todd? These CISOs can never stay all day. We understand. So, all right, Brian Stanek, he is sitting on our panel. He stepped in because Richard Steenan was supposed to be here, and he had some health issues. So, and then Rianne was supposed to be here, and she had COVID. But Brian Stanek, thank you for stepping in today. He's the Vice President of Information Security and Technology at NAMIC Insurance Company. Thanks, Brian. And we met Brian during COVID at one of our bourbon happy hours. So Dan Lohrmann, who I've known for a long time, thanks for supporting us. He's a CISO. He is an author. He just came out with a new book. He's an advisor, blogger, keynote speaker, mentor, and he's working for Presidio now. So thank you, Dan. Okay. Next, I have Ray Trygstad. Okay. He is the Associate Chair Department of Information Technology Management from the Illinois Institute of Technology. And did you come all the way from Chicago today?
I came all the way from Naples.
That was so nice. Thank you. I do need some panelists in Chicago in September. I might be calling you. Ron Zochalski, our keynote speaker today, Chief Technology Officer, Chief Information Officer at Lake County, Indiana. And thanks for supporting so many of our events. Thank you. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff. I'm going to turn it over to Ron. And we'll bring some more chairs for you guys standing because there's chairs out here. But it's kind of tight up here. There's some in there, but we'll help you out. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron. He'll pass the mic. Most of them, you know who's up here, but I will let them have the mic. Remember, we'd love for you guys to be involved in this, and just wait for the mic to come to you before you ask your questions. So let's welcome our panelists.
Well, thank you, Kim. Okay. All right, we're going to have the panelists do their own introductions, so I don't botch any names. I mean, Zochalski, that's a tough one myself, but go ahead, Laura.
Hi, my name is Laura Hamel, and I'm a principal of managed detection and response at Red Canary. I've been working in cybersecurity for the last 13 years, both at smaller startups and at large MSSPs.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Lohrmann. I am the field CISO at Presidio. And I've been in the security industry since the mid-'80s, actually. I started my career at the National Security Agency. I was in England with Lockheed and Mantech in the 90s. And then 17 years in Michigan government. So I was in Michigan, I was an agency CIO. I was the first CISO for all 50 states, first CISO in Michigan in government. And then I was CTO in Michigan and then CSO in Michigan. So we're going to talk about that. And then left Michigan government in 2014. And joined a company called Security Mentor. We did security awareness training, and now I'm with Presidio. And my book, just real quick, I'll mention real quick, is Cyber Mayday and the Day After, a leader's guide to preparing, managing, and recovering from inevitable business disruption, which is a mouthful, but you can get it on Amazon. It's actually a book about ransomware stories. So, you know, what happened, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what you do before, during, and after a ransomware incident, and what's happened all over the world. So, happy to talk to you about that if you have questions.
Hi, my name's Ray Trygstad, and I am the Associate Chair of the Department of Information Technology and Management at Illinois Tech in Chicago. We offer 3 degrees, 18 courses as part of our curriculum in cybersecurity specifically. I'm also the Associate Director of our Center for Cybersecurity and Forensics Education. Prior to my current role in academics, I was an IT director for the university for many years. I've been involved in cybersecurity since 1987, almost as long as him, when the Navy pointed a finger at me and said, "You're an information system security officer," and I said, "Aye, aye, sir." I'm also vitally interested in workforce development in cybersecurity particularly. I am a commissioner and team chair for ABET that accredits computing programs, and I was formerly a program evaluator for both information technology and cybersecurity. I also am the chair of ACM Special Interest Group on Information Technology Education. We're also vitally interested in workforce development in both IT and cyber. So I have a lot of concerns about workforce, and that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today.
Hi, I'm Brian Stanek. I'm the Vice President of Information Technology and Security for NAMIC Insurance Company. NAMIC Insurance Company sells professional liability to the NAMIC membership, which is the Association of Mutual Insurance Companies, and we also sell cybersecurity insurance to that NAMIC membership and affiliates. Now, I came up a little differently than these guys. I came up started out as a DBA, went to full stack developer, systems architect, data architect, a few other architectural terms here and there, and got taken into security when New York decided to pass its cybersecurity laws. So at that point, I was at the company, built a cybersecurity program from scratch, including splitting off the parent company networks and fulfilling the requirements of the New York cybersecurity laws in under 3 months. So that's basically it.
Well, thank you. I'm going to try to keep this more of an informal discussion. just because we have some expert panelists here, but I'd like you to participate a little bit more so this becomes more interactive, maybe in the teacher side. So I won't call on you, don't worry, like I do my students. But what I wanted to talk about first, since the biggest topic is resources and finding the right personnel, and I was really going to get each panelist input on what they think the issue is from their perspective, or what kind of challenges they face, what kind of successes they had in their own roles in the past. So if whoever wants to start is welcome to. Come on, Ray.
Okay, I'm gonna hit two areas. I'll try to go through them real quickly. First area is endpoint security. Of course, everyone's concerned about endpoint security. As we move to zero trust, all security is at the endpoint, right? The big endpoint that poses a problem today, and actually one of the ones we're wrestling with at the university where I am, and I'm not the CISO. The guy who has that role actually worked for me for 14 years at the university, 9 years, 14, whatever, and he's one of my faculty members as well, and so he put me on his advisory board. So the big endpoint trip up in today's world is many organizations, many enterprises are allowing bring your own device, right? It's one of the hot things for a variety of reasons. Hey, it saves you money. People like using their own device, but the problem is that we have to ensure that we secure those particular endpoints, and that's a real challenge. There are two things you need to do, in my opinion. Obviously, it's just my opinion. Two things you need to do. First of all, when the person says, "Oh, I want to use my iPad in the workplace," and I'm known well around the university because I'm never without my iPad. I'm an avid reader. All my books are on here, so I always have it. But they want to use their iPad. So there are two things that have to be done. First of all, that person has to have their system backed up, right? So all their data is backed up. There's a couple ways to approach that. You can pay for it, but why? I mean, I pay $2 a month for iCloud and back up my iPad, and it backs up all the time, okay? Gets a little different when people are using their own notebook computer in the workplace. Then it might be worth paying for it. I'm not gonna endorse anybody, but I can tell you at the university, for a while, we've been using Code 42, and I'm real happy with it. It does real-time backup on my notebook computer, and it's accessible. My backup's accessible from anywhere through the web. Pretty useful. So that's one thing you have to do with the BYOD things. The other thing that you have to do is some kind of endpoint management software that you're going to put on that device. Okay, the endpoint management software does a variety of things. There are a lot of vendors who make this. It should, include that device as a regular part of your security architecture and put whatever is necessary in place on that device to ensure that it has proper protection. Most important thing that it does for you probably, though, is if their device is stolen, it should do a wipe, right? So when they report their device is stolen, you flick the switch, you turn the wipe on, next person to boot up the device, there's nothing there, okay? So that way, make sure that none of the work product that they have on their device is ever exposed. So that's my little spiel, my little pitch about what I see as a big concern about endpoint security. The other area, I told you as I was introduced that I'm really concerned about workforce. Why am I concerned about workforce? Well, I know that Ron probably trotted out some of the same figures that I have because, of course, they come from the same source. There are currently 714,000 unfilled cybersecurity jobs in the United States, right? 714,000. There's only a little bit over 1 million people in the total cybersecurity workforce. So we have almost 3/4 as many unfilled positions as we do actually filled positions. The big problem that we run into is everybody wants 690,000 of those, I'll guess, just a guess, right? They want 5 years experience, okay? They want 5 years experience. But a lot of those jobs are not 5 years experience jobs. I was recently looking for one of my students on their behalf. I was looking for some county, state, and local government jobs. And I looked at the other Lake County, not Ron's Lake County, the other Lake County. Lake County, Illinois. Lake County, Illinois has 2 entry-level jobs posted right now. Bottom of the pay scale is $77,000, which, by the way, for a county government, that's a pretty good pay scale for a starting cyber person, right? Both jobs, though, say 5 years experience. And I'm sorry, you and I know that anybody with 5 years experience is going to go, 77? No, 6 figures, sorry, or I'm not interested, right? So these 690,000 jobs that want 5 years experience, they're not being filled. And one of the reasons they're not being filled is because, guess what? HR doesn't know any better. So HR gets all these great resumes from people who could clearly do the job, and they go in the circular file because this is a new grad, okay? So how do you hire new grads? How do you reposition your hiring so you can really genuinely fill entry-level positions with entry-level people who are going to be capable? Well, one of the things that we've worked very hard in academia is to have a lot more programs giving degrees in cybersecurity. There are a lot of degrees in cybersecurity, and everybody goes, well, how do I know? How do I know there's any quality to the degrees in cybersecurity? Well, let me tell you what I think. I think you need to look for a credentialed degree, okay? And there are 2 significant credentials right now for degrees in cybersecurity. One is from the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security. They give their blessing to a program and say, you are now a National Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Education. That means that they have gone through a pretty rigorous process that says, hey, not only do our graduates know about cybersecurity, they know about networking, they know about databases, they know about web development, they know about coding. You know, all those things that is the reason you put the 5 years experience piece there. You want to make sure people can do all those things. The other credentialing is to have a degree that is program accredited by ABET in cybersecurity. And I can tell you this as well. The standards for the Center of Academic Excellence and for ABET accreditation are extremely similar because ABET and NSA have been working hand in hand on making those standards really similar. I'm very active in women in cybersecurity, which is odd being a guy, but the reason I am is because I was the co-chair of the 2018 conference, National Conference for Women in Cybersecurity. And I see these young women all the time posting on Facebook, hey, I'm a new grad, I can't get a job. Well, why can't they get a job? Because they put out 100 resumes, and every single place a resume went, they want 5 years experience. And even though they would be perfectly suited for a lot of those jobs, they don't get extended an offer because HR puts them in the circular file because they don't meet the minimum requirements. So I've become an apostle preaching to the masses here, don't put 5 years experience. If there's any possibility that someone who has reasonable credentials can do that job for you. Last thing, and then I'll pass the mic off because I know these folks, other folks have things they want to say too. Try before you buy, okay? Try before you buy. We have a 97% job placement rate out of our program in Illinois Tech. Why do we have that? Well, because an awful lot of our kids go out and they intern, okay? So if you take on interns, and you don't have to take on a lot of interns, you got to pay them. You don't have to pay them a lot. 20 is enough, 20 an hour, okay? That's sufficient for an intern. Take on 3 interns, odds are you're going to get 1 hire out of those 3 interns. Okay? It's well worth taking a chance. So if you've never thought about doing internships, that's your chance to see if any of those 3 people that you have intern can fill your 1 cybersecurity role down the way by ensuring that they have sufficient skills. And the reason you have to pay your interns is because unpaid interns aren't allowed to do real work. Paid interns can do real work, so you can, honest to God, give them real work. Out of Illinois Tech, I have interns that are out there working as project managers. Why? Because we teach project management. And they get into the company, and the company says, do you know anything about project management? Oh, yeah, I had a whole course in it. Sure, no problem. And they say, okay, good, you're a project manager. And you go, interns as project managers? Well, you know what? You got to put people in the slot where they fit. So anyway, thank you. That's my piece. Thanks. I'll pass it along.
Thanks, Ray.
Okay, I'm going to approach it a little bit differently. I kind of like to give you what our experience is. We have an HR department. We're a small company, and our HR department, they are very good. Don't get me wrong, they are very good in what they do. They do not understand technology. They go through 5 years experience. Yeah, that's a standard. That's kind of, that works. I mean, yes, I think they got a boilerplate saying, 5 years on everything. And I looked at one job description that they put up, and 5 years experience on a particular technology. I went to HR and said, that product's only been around for 2. They don't know it. They don't understand it. And then certifications. Certifications are an interesting topic, and I can talk for hours about them. I have some certifications. I've had them all throughout my life. I've been certified as a data architect, systems architect, as I said. I've been certified as a DBA. I'm certified CISO. I'm a certified in Rapid7 and a bunch of other technologies around here. I don't have a CISSP. I send out a resume, HRs will just drop it because I don't have that degree. Did I choose the wrong certification? No, it was right for my company. And so that to me is a big issue, is HR just doesn't understand the technologies. They don't understand the certifications. They don't understand the people. What did we do is we just made it simple. HR passed us all the resumes, and we'll make that decision. We designated a point person to work with HR to get all the resumes in and to make that decision at that point. Now, it took a lot of political work to do that and a lot of trying to get HR to do that because they don't like that. But eventually we were able to get that working. We ended up having to buy a lot of tools, automated tools, to fulfill people because we couldn't find them, not only because of HR rejecting them, but the price point. I came out of college many years ago, $30,000. My son came out of college 2 years ago, $89,000 a year. That's ridiculous. He knows less than I did.
No, but he'll tell you that he knows more than you do, right?
No, actually, he calls me all the time and asks me how to do things.
Okay.
So. But yeah, it's an interesting thing going around right now. People want more money. People don't have the skills, and people don't understand the technology that we do. So.
All right, I can kind of piggyback off of some of the things you guys were saying as someone who has joined the workforce in the last 13 years and as a woman in cybersecurity. So I think it's really important to mentor women in cybersecurity. And your mentor doesn't have to be another woman. There's not enough of us to mentor all the other women that are coming into cybersecurity. So I love that you are a mentor. And the reason that I know a lot about cybersecurity is also because I don't have all these certifications. When you come out of school, you don't necessarily have the time, the means, or the money to get the certs. But you can learn from amazing, intelligent people like all of you guys who I've had the pleasure of meeting today that can really teach you about cybersecurity. And I think that that's the best thing. Open yourself up for questions, mentorships, and foster younger people learning. Because despite the fact that there's a lot of open cybersecurity jobs, I actually think the stats are much higher than the ones that you recommended. I also think there's a lot of people that are going to be retiring soon. And I know that because a lot of my mentors are looking at retirement. So it's really important to foster younger people, women, and people of color to bring them into the cybersecurity industry so we can have a very rich, diverse industry with people that have an opportunity to, grow up and expand in the industry, because it's really cool. And it'd be great to see a lot more young people in it.
What are some of the obstacles that when you've mentioned cybersecurity to other peers, or maybe when you were in college, what was their reaction?
we didn't really know about cybersecurity
Okay.
in
Yeah,
college.
all right.
There
Okay.
were no classes on
Right.
cybersecurity
Right.
when I graduated college.
What about technology in general, though? What was their reaction?
Well, everybody was a man.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
you know, STEM programs weren't out there, and so you'd get into computer science, and there'd be like 5 girls. And I went to a very large university. I went to the University of Colorado at Boulder.
Oh, okay.
And so there'd only be a few of us, and then it got kind of awkward. I actually like stopped the program and got a degree elsewhere. I knew how to code. My dad taught me when I was a kid.
Yeah, sure.
And this is like everyone that's coming in. They already know how to code. They already know technology. They're basically free IT people for their entire families.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's cool to bring them in. How I found out about cybersecurity is I got into CDN and DDoS.
Oh, okay.
And I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. And I'd kind of been like a hacker on the side too. So it just
So the
made a
side
lot
gig.
of sense
Okay.
to go into it.
Right. So Dan, interesting enough, you mentioned you worked for the NSA before.
Yep.
Based on that perspective, put yourself back a little bit. What do you think some of the skill sets that need to happen since you worked for the NSA early on, but some things haven't changed, obviously.
Yeah, great question. I really love your comment about mentoring, but I just want to mention real quick, and I'll answer your question.
Sure.
I mentor several women actually, and people all over the world, and it's something I think everyone really should either be a mentor and have a mentor. And or both at different times in your career, and we can all do it. We can all find someone or someone's, who we can help. So I think that should be a challenge for all of us. So I love that. A couple things I would say, NSA taught me a lot, and besides having a top secret clearance and all of that in the 3-letter agencies, a lot. It's amazing how many things have repeated themselves through the years. At NSA, it's like security is our middle name, right? So it's like everything you did with security, even though we didn't call it cybersecurity at that time, we called it information security and things like that. But certainly, lifelong trainer is one of that. The lifelong training. None of us. Technology is constantly changing, and there's constantly a need, and NSA did that really well. They still do. The National Cryptologic School is outstanding. So always be learning, always be trying, thirsting for knowledge. I think that's a real important thing. I just want to mention a couple other quick things, just real quick tips I would mention. I'm seeing anybody out there looking for a job right now? Any hands? Nobody right now. Okay, good. Maybe one. Okay. I saw some in the session earlier. Several people said they were looking for jobs. It's amazing to me, even in a market that has so many openings, how many people still are open to a job. And so we need to think in terms of not just certainly out of college. I love the comments that were made about internships, student jobs. It's all helpful. Presidio, we do a lot of those kinds of things around the country. But I also think mid-career and late career. I have people literally 60 plus that want to get into cybersecurity right now. So it's not a one or done. It's not also public or private sector. I've seen people go back and forth between the two. I spent a large part of my career in the private sector, but most of my career in the public sector. So I find, loving government service and the opportunity to really make a difference, I think is a huge thing. NSA really taught me that, around the world, that it's not just about money. I mean, money's certainly a big part of it. We all have families and we want to have a good career, but think in terms of a marathon, not a sprint. Because you're learning things all through the process. I learned things at NSA and in England with Lockheed and Mantech, NSA contractors, that really set me up to be the first CISO in Michigan and really prepare me for the jobs that I had later, 20 years into my career. So think in terms of a marathon. Don't think in terms of a sprint. If you're out there, if you're in some other part of technology, you're watching online right now. Maybe you're a system administrator. Maybe you're in databases. Maybe you're in some other aspect and you want to move into cybersecurity. We need people to come over from other areas. We need people to come back. Another thing I've heard a lot of is people that are burned out, that have just given up on it because it's long hours. I think work-life balance is a big challenge. And last but not least, I just want to mention a real quick trend. I do think more and more companies are deciding that we want to just go to managed services. That we're not really in the IT business. We're in the fill in the blank business. We're in the retail sales. We're in airlines. We're in whatever it might be your business is. And they decided that they're going to actually actually just, outsource is a bad word sometimes, partner with someone, bring in experts in the field and really work with them. I'm seeing a lot of that around the country, a lot of working together as a team. And I really think staff aug is another one. I think that's a big trend. People are just saying, I can't hire these positions, or if I do, I train them up and they leave. And so they've just decided that certain roles, they're just going to bring in partners to do that. I'll stop there.
And I know on the government side, there's like 910,000 openings nationwide. You can get a lot of experience. I've got a lot more experience, even on the physical side. Myself, I mean, I've taken it more for the experience part than I've taken it for the dollars that you can hire. You know, you're paying for at least in Lake Indiana, you're paying with taxpayer dollars, so they look at things differently, including my salary. But anyway, you learn a lot of stuff. You meet a lot of people. So it's basic fundamental problems. I mean, when I first walked in there, as an example, I saw a dot matrix printout 6 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, I transferred into the time warp. I'm back. But
Can I just jump in with one other thing on that? I mean, I think people forget that the number one thing that why they stay in the job they're in is their boss, their relationship with their management, and are they really feeling that they have a good career path and they're learning and they're growing? My experience in government, I was going to mention this earlier, but I forgot, is just I got much more broader opportunities than I would have gotten had I gone straight into a contract situation with a vendor or a number of other companies. It was very much, you're going to do this and stay in the cube and we'll throw pizza over the wall. I mean, it was literally, this is your role. And that was it. And so in government, it was much broader. I mean, and so I really, really appreciate that about government service.
It is. Thanks, Dan. So the other topic I want to bring up too is actually we're seeing on a daily basis. Basically, I just saw you saw the one with the GPS units being hackable, so to speak. My question becomes, I don't know what your thoughts on this, but my question becomes, how do we end up using those things in the first place, knowing darn well that they're going to want to hack in anyway, right? So what are some of those kinds of threats? Why are we starting to see more of those kinds of threats that just popped up out of nowhere? And how do we actually defend against a lot of those? I mean, how do your teams do it?
I think we're seeing all those threats because it's fun.
Because it's fun?
It's fun to hack different stuff.
Okay. So expound upon that a little bit.
I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have backgrounds as hackers, but it's a fun challenge. And now there's more stuff than ever to hack. Everything's IoT. That's a lot of fun.
Right. So
that's why everyone's hacking it.
So what you're saying is that if I plug my washer and dryer into the you want to hack it and then make the buzzer go off sooner to irritate me?
No, I'm going to hack your washer and dryer, and then I'm going to get into your home network.
Okay.
I'm going to get into your bank account, man.
Look at that.
I don't care how clean your clothes are. I'm sorry.
I thought that was a girl thing. You guys are always looking for clean clothes.
Thanks for the stereotype, man.
Not a problem. Anytime.
Yeah, so I think that's why, and there's more stuff to hack, and as a digital native or cord cutter, whatever you want to call me, I will not have a smart home. I don't have you don't either, man, because you can hack it, because you can hack into the camera on your computer and
right. Yes.
Oh yeah. I think there was a movie about that. There was. Yeah. So
we have a question back there.
Question? Yeah.
Have you not discovered the fun of
Yeah. Good point.
Repeat the question for me.
He said, "Have you not discovered the fun of a honeypot?" So I think that's why everyone's hacking everything, because it's fun and you can.
It's fun to do.
I think that you need to think like the attacker. Zero trust is a very popular thing, and I don't know why it didn't come up earlier in our industry, because it is trusting more things than just your endpoint. But these are all different endpoints. What's your question? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Why do people want to hack IoT? The younger generation grew up with technology. So we just see all these things connected to the internet now. So I'll repeat it. So, why do we want to hack IoT devices? Why are all of these things popping up, these technologies that shouldn't be connected to the internet in the first place, right? Well, first off, it's the progression of leveraging technology within our civilization. right? To not stay stagnant, to not be complacent, and to try and drive innovation. And then the younger generation that, grew up with all this technology at their fingertips, really just being, inquisitive and wanting to know how things work, wanting to know how far the line was, how far they could push it. And then you see, these same kids are growing up seeing these cyber attacks, ransomware, shutting down Colonial Pipeline, or more recently, right, the war between Russia and Ukraine and the cyber attacks, and the difference between cyber warfare and operations and kinetic warfare, and what are the differences, or how are they similar, and really seeing how they can make an impact on all of these things that are just being connected to the internet. Because especially now, having gone through COVID, these same young kids, all they got to experience in terms of socialization was connecting with their friends over the internet. Right? So how can they leverage this to just, mess with things? It's fun, right? It's a challenge, it's something that they're not supposed to do, so they're obviously just going to do it naturally. But also, they hear about all these cyber professions and, the money that can be made, whether legitimate or illegitimate, and how can I get into that? I see these kids driving Lamborghinis because of a Bitcoin scam, or because the Nigerian prince, I want to be like that guy and just have tons of money. I want to own an island. I mean, do you really? But they get into it and then they just start, hacking, and they're actually turning into these security researchers without necessarily knowing it. So I think it's just naturally inquisitive mindsets that are really just kind of driving it.
Thank you.
You totally said it. We have a whole generation of pen testers.
I guess I have a different take. I'm not saying that's not true, but I guess I just would mention a couple things. One, I think the attack surface has grown tremendously. There's no question about that. But in addition, you've got global ransomware gangs. You've got organized crime, nation-state attacks, and very, very organized criminals that, in the same way you would have, all kinds of historical different types of organized criminal enterprises. Now it's become so much easier to do. So they have ransomware kits. It's actually literally, I think most of you probably know this, is ransomware as a service. You don't take a level of expertise. They'll actually package it for you. They'll make it easier for you to do. And so the scale is so much wider. You asked a question earlier, Ron, during your session, are they so much better than us? I think that they're not that much smarter, but what they are is they only have to be right once. We've all heard that a million times, right? And we've also all heard the line, why do people rob banks? It's because that's where the money is. I mean, the reality is there are certainly experts that are doing cutting edge things, but most of these attacks are hitting vulnerabilities that have been out there in many cases for years, sometimes months. But it's not all zero-day attacks. They're going after really pretty low-hanging fruit. And the bottom line is that it's becoming more and more pervasive because it's really so easy to do for the criminal enterprises and nation states. That's my view.
Let me just echo that. I constantly tell my students that one of the things they need to be aware of more than anything else is, I was going to use the Willie Sutton quote. He stole it from me here. But, Willie Sutton, bank robber, people ask him why he robbed banks. Well, because that's where the money is. Where is money today? Money today is ones and zeros. Most of the money in the world is ones and zeros. Somebody has a company, they sell their company, they get paid. They get paid how? They get paid through a transfer, a bank transfer. The bank money goes from one bank to another bank. That money never is currency. It's never gold. It's just ones and zeros going from the one bank to the other bank. And so once money is all ones and zeros, then everybody wants those ones and zeros. It's like, hey, I got a shot at grabbing some of those ones and zeros for myself, and hey, they happen to be money. That's why.
So in regards to that, though, a lot of organizations have just paid the ransomware. Yeah. And 53% or so have maybe gotten the keys to unlock it. So basically, we just threw away money, just open a window and send it out. So the question is that why are there organizations that just pay it, right? Because it's almost considered like a cost of doing business, okay? So we all know as security professionals, we know what's some of the basic things that you have to do, the patching and everything else, but it doesn't get done. So my question is why is it not getting done when all those people are gaining all that money for easy money? Why? Got any suggestions?
I want to say laziness, but
I wasn't saying that.
even in a company our size, we struggle keeping the patches up. One is there's exploits all the time.
Right.
Two, penetration testing. I'm a certified ethical hacker. I can't hack my way out of a paper bag, but at least I understand the test. Right. Although if I could hack your washer and dryer, I would turn your cold cycle to hot just to be
Is that what you would do? Boy, it's
Yes.
interesting. I got different perspectives on that one. Okay.
But that's, yeah. But, the tools are out there. In the ethical hacking world, there's a term called script kiddies, which is basically a person who knows absolutely nothing except for how to run a program. And they can run a Metasploit. They can run any of the other tools out there. They can run ransomware as a service. And they do it because they're bored.
Got it.
And they're doing it, and they're running network scans. I mean, look at your firewall logs. How many network scans are you getting on, within 20 seconds? It's getting to the point you can't even keep up with the number of scans that are being run by these tools because everybody's running them.
Right.
And what they're doing is they're finding these patches, they're finding these vulnerabilities, whether are existing or not, and either people didn't know about them, network administrators who never knew about them, or network administrators who just don't have the time to fix them because they're fixing everything else in the system. Your network goes down for one reason, but you got 40 other vulnerabilities out there. What are you going to prioritize? Getting your network back up, and then those other 40 vulnerabilities may be completely forgotten about because you were working for a day or two on getting your networks restored.
So that leads me to the next question is communication. There's a lot of evangelization going on right now, right? We're all evangelists, right? We're like on the bleeding edge, right? We're talking, and it's kind of like senior management isn't listening. Is it just because some people on IT or CISOs or whatever just don't they don't get credibility as far as the business is concerned? They don't understand what the business issues are? Or is it more of just, I'm just going to pay it because of the cost of doing business?
Interestingly enough, a lot of people look at the ransomware piece and they hope they actually get ransomware from one of the Russian biggies, right? There are syndicates in Russia that are well known. Some of them maintain their own websites that run ransomware. And people hope they get ransomware from them. Why? Because they've built a reputation. If you pay them, they give you your key. Okay? It's the fly-by-night ransomware. The kids who get the ransomware software, there's no guarantee you're going to get a key or not. And so communications is a big issue. Internal communications is an issue. External communications, in this instance, I'm talking about within IT and cyber and outside to the rest of the organization. Okay? Inside, we have problems with the fact that things just don't move the way they're supposed to. People always trot out the Equifax hack, okay? That was a known vulnerability, and they had it on their docket of things that should have been done, and it never got out to the person who needed to do it. And why didn't it get there? I'm going to go back to my academic hat as a credentialing person. Who hires a CIO that has 2 degrees in music and no certification, or CISO that has 2 degrees in music and no certifications? What kind of credentials did she have to be running cybersecurity at Equifax? I don't get that. Communications, though, it's always the case. Before I was in cybersecurity, well, even while I was in cybersecurity, I was a pilot in the Navy. And I had a friend who had to bail out of an airplane. Why did he have to bail out of an airplane? It's all about risk management, right? There was a known risk with that airplane. If you got it into certain conditions, you couldn't get it out of the spin. They couldn't get it out of the spin, so you had to bail out. Well, it turns out there was a spin recovery procedure. It was sitting in somebody's inbox at the Naval Air Test Center, and it had never been promulgated out. So you have to have the internal communications that gets out everything that needs to get out to people to manage the risks internally. Second, you have to communicate to senior management in ways that they understand. I love Equifax because it's a great one to trot out and go, look, here's people who didn't do what they needed to do, something that should have been pretty simple, but they didn't have enough support. They didn't have somebody qualified hired to run this operation, and look what happened to them. That can happen to us. We have to have qualified staff. We have to have the tools that we need to properly secure the risks to our information systems.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything anybody said. I would take a little different tact on this. I do think the C-suite is getting the message. I had a chance to speak to about 120 CEOs in New York City about a month ago. And I was the second speaker up at this event. And right before me was a panelist of the top issues for an hour of the top CEOs from some pretty big companies. Mm-hmm. And ransomware came up in that conversation twice.
Twice?
In fact, the first guy that spoke, I won't go into the names, but first guy that spoke was like, I really want to hear the next guy because we just got hit by ransomware. Yeah. So people, it's not like the C-suite is A, ignoring this, or B, oblivious. Right. They've gotten that memo. That's my view. Now, the problem is this. So that's like 1.0. Right. We're at 3, 4.0 now. Ransomware has evolved. Even the bad guys. The sad thing is they're ahead of us. They seem to be at 5 or 6.0. We're still trying to preach 3.0. Right. And what do I mean by that? You know, just when we started figuring out the keys and the encryption, they decided they're gonna sell the data as well. Right. They're gonna run some side businesses. So we all know, and there's people in this room that can describe the evolution of ransomware over the last several years better than I can. So I'm not going to go there. Most of you probably have seen those presentations. But the reality of it is that many people think they're ready. In fact, I've done presentations and I ask right now, how many of you have done a tabletop exercise? Raise your hand. At your organization, tabletop exercise. Most organizations have now. 3 years ago, what's a tabletop exercise? You know, so most people, like for example, one example, they know that they need to practice. They know that could happen. This is like a fire department needs to practice putting out fires before they actually have to put a real fire out in a neighborhood. So they're getting that message. The problem I see, and I think we continue to struggle with, is it's moving so much faster. And like a lot of times those tabletop exercises, for example, they get about halfway through and they say, at this point, we're going to hit the green easy button and all the data is going to be restored, you know. Right. And so they don't, and this just came up real loud and clear at the Gartner conference in Washington about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Like, for example, many organizations, they really don't ever, they have backups. They have the data backed up. They have the tapes. They never actually restore their data in the actual systems, and so it actually happens. They don't do that. They say, how many do it annually? How many do it 6 times? You know, it's like a less than 50%. It's the devil's in the details. The bad guys are, okay, you're doing A, B, and C. Got it. That memo is out there. Now we're going to start doing D, E, and F. Now we're going to start doing X, Y, and Z. So, I mean, it is all the things they said. It is the patching. It is, the communication. It is doing lunch. IT staff, go do lunch with your business staff, not just the IT staff. Security people need to not just hang out with the other technology people. Meet with the business, get to know the business, have the relationship. All those things are true, but I also think it's the due diligence in the process, and it just seems like we're a step behind the attackers right now. Right. And so I'll just stop there. I could say more.
No, that's good.
Nothing to add, man. You covered it.
You covered it. No, the other question I have, too, is the data itself. Now, I have a question. Because the data, like, I worked for a wireless company before. Now, the problem is I'm no longer a customer of theirs, okay? So why should they retain my data, my driver's license, my social security number, my old address, what kind of phone, why is that data being stored? That's the question I have. I think as consumers, I guess, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but go ahead. But the question is that IT is in a position to back up the data and then restore the data. But the question is, what is the data? And why should we retain that? I mean, if I was a former customer, what does it matter? Right? I'm not with you right now. That's whatever, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Price, whatever the situation is. I give that one as an example. So what is it? Do we actually go in there? I mean, have you seen, Dan, across the country, are they actually looking at what data that they're actually storing? Because there's gigabytes of data sitting out there on backups. You don't even know if it's valid or not. Right? Right?
I'd love to hear your views, but both of your views. I think really what you're talking about in government, we would think about this problem as, and it's all related. I'm not saying it's different, but privacy versus security, right. And like really thinking through with the lawyers, what legal data do we have to, what steps, what data do we have to have? How do we use it? What's the rights of our consumers? What's the rights of the citizens? What's the right of our customers to see that data, to update the data? I do think that privacy is becoming a bigger deal for a lot of people. We're seeing that with Apple's decision around the data. Right. We're seeing some big changes. I saw a number, go read a report on this. It blew me away. It's like, it was in the billions of dollars that Facebook is losing because Apple made the decision about sharing that data. So, I mean, I do think privacy and organizations are rethinking what data they have. Unfortunately, there's different people have different opinions on this. GDPR in Europe, of course, is a big deal. Right. A lot of people think the way we're doing privacy, the way we're making those decisions is still too bureaucratic. It's not really done in a really thought provoking or thought a way that is really enforceable in the long term. So I mean, I'd love to hear the views of you guys on that, but I mean, I agree with you 100%. That's where organizations should go. Most CISOs I know think, well, that's a privacy discussion, and or the horses are all out of the barn right now, so I just got to get all the horses back. And it's like, should we have the horses in the first place? It's kind of like, I hear you, but, meanwhile, I'm chasing horses around the field.
That's where I'm getting to.
And, it's funny you asked the question about your phone company. They're never going to give up your data because every single piece of data is like a piece of gold to them. Yes. And the reason it is because they hope to have you back as a customer.
I doubt it.
And I understand
After
that.
sharing it on a dark web, I'm sorry.
But see, they don't know that. And their assumption is someday they're going to nab you back as a customer. And one of the things that's going to help them nab you back as a customer is the fact that as soon as you give them your name, they'll pull it up and go, oh, yeah, she used to have service with us. And I see, of course, when you're calling for technical assistance, they can't pull up anything.
That went out to India.
Yeah,
so that's tier one.
And that one I can't fathom. You call for technical assistance, they can't find anything. But if you call to talk about reinstating your account, boy, they're going to pull that stuff right up.
That's how they navigate the phone tree.
And that's why they're why they're never going to give your data up. And the problem is that unfortunately, we've had insufficient national will in our country to protect people's privacy the way that Europe has decided to do it, the way the state of California has decided to do it, right? And the good news is because California decided to do it, if you have customers in California, you got to do the same thing. So they kind of backdoored a little bit of privacy protection for the rest of us. But the reason we don't have national legislation is because they spend literally millions of dollars to prevent that legislation from occurring. Okay? Millions of dollars to do everything they can to defeat privacy protection for the American people. It's just, it's true.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I had a general question to tie a few of these things together. Speaking of vulnerabilities, privacy, end of life, etc. So there's a lot of companies that come out with great software and they die. as a company, or their software, they create a new version of it, move on, leave the old version, but some customers are still out there hanging with this old software that is no longer secure, no longer being patched, no longer being maintained in any kind of way. A lot of this has to do with intellectual property and copyright laws. What do you guys see as a way to fix this problem with those things currently in place? Because I see that as a big issue.
Thank you.
I used to tell my wife that if I had the answer to those problems, I'd be a billionaire.
I'll give you two quick ones. I was fascinated recently. They're actually talking about companies and that, but actually for us as individuals, it's a big issue. So when people die, you know, and then everything's online bank accounts now, and everyone's volunteering to not get the paper because they want to save trees, right? So everything's online. I mean, it's happening all over the country right now. New companies are being born. I won't go into and start naming names, but you can go out and research them that are like, you know, a digital footprint to like you can like pass along to your spouse or to your family, or and that's a whole business that I see growing, and I saw some numbers to the tune of billions of dollars, that this is actually a very big growing business. So it's at individual level, it's at our family level. We all should be thinking about that, you know, when you're thinking about your wills and all that kind of thing. But absolutely, it's a big issue for a lot of companies, and it actually is a business out there of companies that are, I don't see any here today, but actually in the business of dealing with those exact issues around what data, what about the software, what about the privacy, what about the intellectual property, et cetera.
I don't have any thoughts on really how to protect that, because on a personal level, like, you know, all my info's on the internet. Everyone could go to Spokio and like type in your name. It'll say your grandma's name. Right. What I'm more concerned about is who companies are selling my data to. This is why I haven't been on Facebook in years. Right. You know, so I think you also need to think about like your supply chain, your partners, anyone that you give access to your data. You need to ask them what they're going to do with the data. And I'm, of course, a big fan of getting GDPR in our country because I think it's the next step. So I don't have an answer to your question.
Okay, I've got a couple of things that we've done in the past, make it kind of what we've done. First of all, when it comes to data retention, for us, we're an insurance company. We have to maintain, we're a multi-state insurance company, including Guam. So that means we have legislation that says we have to keep your information in claim files for 21 years after the claim was closed. So if you have a claim that takes 3 to 4 years to go through, then after that 3 to 4 years, and it is finally closed and out of the courts and out of all of the appeals, we have to keep it for 21 years because that's the statute of limitations. That's the largest statute of limitations inside of the United States. Now, when you're talking about personal data you're given, let's say that you're in, now my company, we don't insure you. We insure insurance companies. So we are the ones that when you sue your insurance company, that's when we get involved. Now, let's say that you sue your insurance company because you got it in an accident and you're suing them for bad faith. They didn't pay you on time. They didn't pay the amount that you wanted to do. Speaking to personal data, they send us all your data. Now, they're supposed to redact your medical history. They don't half the time. So we go through and we follow the HIPAA requirements. It's encrypted at transmit and at rest and in backup, all the stuff that you're supposed to do. So we do that. But yeah, your data floats around, and that is perfectly legal within GDPR and in with CC and in California. So speaking of that now, to your question directly, when it talks about legacy systems, 21 years, we've replaced our systems at least twice and re-architected it at least 3 times since then, and we're going through a complete replacement this year. What do? Well, that's where your security controls come in. You isolate it. you, if you can, and my recommendation is to put it on a closed network. So if you can, a network that has, you have to be on that network. You have to go to that machine, be on that network, and that network cannot talk to the internet.
That's right.
And that's the best way to do it. And when I've talked to most vendors, Microsoft, when we were talking Dynamics, and we've talked to other things, a lot of them will allow you to purchase a version of their software for that environment, even if it's a cloud-based, so you could do an isolated private cloud to handle that. That's the best solution in my opinion. Beyond that, monitor it like crazy and put in the security controls you can and try to get off it. There was a story about Cummins Engine here. They had an IBM 3090. They think they still have it. Nobody knows quite what it does, but the last time they shut it off, it almost shut down the company. So, yeah, there's certain times you can't do things like that. But the best thing to do is to, that's part of your risk assessment. You know that, you add the controls around it, you wrap the controls around it, you put it in as many layers of security controls as you can do.
Did I answer your question?
Yes and no. I was kind of more curious I was kind of more curious if you think that, if a company, say, goes out of business or something like that, and they've got this intellectual property or whatever, and another company typically ends up buying all that intellectual property or whatever, but sometimes companies will sit on that and do nothing with it. But they technically own it. So it's no longer, you might still be able to isolate everything, and that's good and all. That is one, method to, help mitigate the risk, I agree. But, in the long term, though, that's not a good answer, for, how do we get the software to be almost like in the public domain to where it's open source or something like that, to where other people can work on it in some kind of way, to where it can be updated for security things or et cetera. And it's, but I realize, though, that there is, intellectual property, there is copyright laws and et cetera that kind of get in the way of those things. Because not all projects need to die, just because a company dies. It's kind of what I'm getting to.
Part of the answer you hit on, part of the answer is when there are instances where you can use open source software, you should. What's the most popular database management system of the Fortune 500 companies? MySQL. Okay. Why? Because it's free and it's easy to master and it integrates well with everything. Okay, so there are reasons behind that. And so that's one solution. The other solution he hit on, I worked with people who were looking for how to manage some of these things. One company, they actually put their Windows NT system on a virtual machine on an isolated system because they had software that wouldn't run on anything else other than Windows NT for exactly the reason you're talking about. And that's how they managed it. You just have to determine how can you make it work. But the best answer, honestly and unfortunately, is to replace it. You can't keep using it. And that's the other issue is people always say, but it's always worked. But that's the wrong answer. I give one of my classes, I have a class that is the initial class on system integration. So they have to design an information system. I give them an auto supply company in Chicago that is running DBase 5 on DOS. And they say, who's running DBase 5 on DOS? And I said, I'll bet you I can find you at least 2 auto supply companies in Chicago that are still running DBase 5 on DOS because it works. And because they've never had any reason to upgrade it. They've never had any reason to integrate it with the internet. So, but that's the wrong answer. The wrong answer to say, well, we're going to keep using it because it works.
Okay. Do you have another question here?
Yeah, so changing the conversation just a little bit. Dan, I think you opened the door to this, but you mentioned that our profession has a lot more burnout and trouble with work-life balance. And how do you guys see that as being something that can be combated, or how do we work against that?
Yeah, great question. And I just want to mention, if you want to go to govtech.com, Lohrmann on cybersecurity. I do a lot of blogging on that topic and several of these other topics we've talked about as well. I think there's a lot of strategies people have to use. There's kind of two quick scenarios I like to go through and then get some thoughts from other people. But one is, I actually think, in my experience as a CISO, when we had major cyber incidents, we had the Northeast blackout, we had different things that were really kind of like emergency management people work on, fire, flood, tornado, kind of natural disaster things. Believe it or not, those situations aren't the ones that worry me. Because I know people in the cyber industry, they get the adrenaline rush. They kind of like the Die Hard 4 thing. It's almost like if you watch Die Hard 4, and all the lights go out and all this bad stuff happens, it's like they actually run to the fire, if you will, if you're cyber. And I think, so we've had, every organization has cyber incidents. That's not the part that really worries me the most, because after that, any good manager out there is going to give you a nice vacation, going to say, job well done, maybe a cash bonus, and that's why they're in the industry, right? But the day in, day out burnout, the 12-hour days, 7 days a week, the work weekends, that kind of thing really wears down cyber teams. And I think you really, first of all, be aware of it. I think management needs to know when they need help. A lot of times leadership doesn't want to go get help. They don't want to tell their boss. They had a great team, but a lot of the people left. And now the ones that are you're going to burn out your team and you're going to kill the other people because half the team left and now those other people working those long hours. So what are some strategies? There's a lot of strategies around this. Make people take vacation, force them to. I mean, literally force them. But I mean, do it in a professional, kind, loving way. I'm not trying to say, beat them up if they don't take their vacation. But say, we really want you to take vacation. We really want you to have, a
life,
a culture of cybersecurity that is a winning culture. It means play on the softball team. It means do things with other people. It's not just about the latest cyber incident. It really comes down to look at the list of why the best companies to work for in America are the best companies to work for in America. What's their criteria? And are we doing those things? What could we do differently to make our culture much more inviting? And you will attract more people because people want to work for those kind of companies.
We're going to have to take the next virtual question and have one person answer because we're at time. So I don't want to leave our virtual people out. So I am going to have Ron read it.
You'll excuse the expletive that's in this question. What's the panel's opinion about the epidemic of bullshittery, quote unquote, in the industry today? It's almost impossible to find an IT person that will utter the words, "I don't know."
Read it again.
Okay, sure. What is the panel's opinion about the epidemic of bullshittery in the industry today? It's almost impossible to find an IT person that will utter the words, "I don't know." Translation is not willing to admit that I don't know what to do with it.
I think they're hiring the wrong people. Okay. Because honestly, one of the very first tenets of being a good employer, a good employee, it should be a willingness to go, I don't know, but I'll find out.
I need help.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. We had 5 standard responses that we could give to a question. I don't know was not one of the answers. Okay, instead, we always had to reply, I'll find out, sir. Okay, and that, that should be the answer, but it's also fear. So the management has a piece here too. Management builds fear into people of what's going to happen to them if they say, I don't know.
Just add one more thing to that. Great answer. I would just say also, if you've got real relationships in your organization between the technical side, the cyber side, and the business side, I think that helps conquer that issue. I'll tell you why. Because people will call you out. When you go do lunch with the business, and they're like, that's BS. They're not happy with the people who really know and work with you and the people who you want to, answer their questions. So it really does require humility for all of us. Cyber professionals are not known for our humility. I like the question, actually, now that I think about it, because we're known as being prima donnas. And so in general, the way I think you break through some of that is humility with professional excellence, and then being willing to say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find out, like you said. But also really building genuine relationships with people in the business side. If you have them, they'll call you out, just like your family members will call you out. And they'll say, that's not the right answer. I don't agree with you, and here's why.
So to wrap it up, I have this conference travels all over North America, and thank you for all the CISOs that come out. We know how hard your job is, and thank you to all the sponsors that are still left, because we couldn't be here if it were not for you. So this question I'm going to ask each of you CISOs, sorry Laura, this won't be one you'll answer, but I hope the sponsors can tune in, because we all know that as a CISO, your email boxes are insane, your phones are blowing up, your LinkedIn is crazy. So I started asking this question at the beginning of the year. For each of you, what does it take for one of these sponsors to get a meeting with you to take a call? And I'll just pass it. If you could make that pretty quick, because we're over time, if each of you guys could answer that, that'd be great.
I'll make it real simple. Define exactly what you do. Don't tell me you do zero trust. Just tell me exactly what product you offer, where you fit in the picture, and what you distinguish yourself differently. That's it. Other than that, you send me a dissertation and a Gartner report and 16 other research reports, I'm not going to read it.
Yeah, I would just add, I get a chance to go around the room. Great group here. I talked to many of you, so I did have those conversations and I had many follow-ups. So I think a couple things. One, great case studies help. So where, I'm mainly focused on public sector, where are you doing this in the public sector? Why did they choose you? What is the difference that you offer that your competitors don't offer, and why is that really great value for them? And so if you can give me a great case study, that's really, really powerful.
Well, it's been a couple of years because our accrediting agency made me step down from my role as IT director in the university. They said, no, you got to just be faculty. And I said, dang, okay. But one of the things that I still do is I'm on the advisory board for our cybersecurity function within the university. And for vendors, if you tell me what you do better than everyone else and why you do it, that's the thing that gets my attention, and that's the thing that's going to make me take that back to my CISO and go, hey, you should talk to these guys. I think they got the right answer for this particular problem.
I agree with what everybody said, but also, you've done your research, except for if I, kind of stop by in a booth here. But if you're sending me an email on stuff and you've done your research on your company, tell me what it's going to cost me in terms of resources and cost, at least at a ballpark. The one vendor that got through us the fastest came back and said, basically, it is going to take you X number of hours in implementation, and it's going to cost between approximately this to this, assuming that, the details, you got to get your disclaimers around that. But that was the biggest help that we had in identifying a vendor. We knew before we actually got on the phone call whether we could afford the resources, the work, and the implementation effort.
All right, well, we're only 10 minutes over time, so how about a round of applause for our panelists? And how about another round of applause for all of our sponsors, because we couldn't be here without them. So, okay, well, the bar's still open. I have prizes to pull. So everyone on my panel, if it's time for you to go get a drink, if you're in my prizes, you'll just want to keep your ears open, because and I'm going to be a little slow going at this because we were a little understaffed today. So.